Hello, everyone, and welcome to the PMO Virtual Summit. We've got an amazing guest, Lindsay Scott, here today, who's going to get us into the nitty and gritty of what it really takes to get a great PMO role. Welcome, Lindsay. It's so good to have you here.
Thank you for the invite. Really looking forward to getting into it. Great.
Awesome. Before we get started, Lindsay, I want to tell everyone about you. So, Lindsay Scott's been around PMO since the late 90s, working first as a project office coordinator and later as the PMO manager for Hewlett-Packard's consulting division. She then became the co-founding director of Aras People, the project management recruiting business, and focused on PMO recruitment for a number of years. To her, it felt like the Wild West. Not many businesses knew how to find the right kind of PMO talent for their business, so there was certainly a lot of education going on. She also stayed part of the PMO community and volunteered for the PPSO SIG. The PPSO SIG was a community of PMO practitioners who met after taking their training course called the PPSO, or the Program and Project Support Office. Lindsay is still friends today with the people she met there and often get together while running and attending the PMO flash mob. So there you have it, everyone. That's Lindsay Scott for you. Lindsay, over to you now.
Thank you very much. And it's great to be here talking to hopefully so many people that are passionate about a career in PMO and obviously around PMO leadership as well. And thanks for the great intro. So you can probably gather from that I've been in and around PMO careers for quite a while now and seen such a change over the years. So what I want to get into today is PMO careers and landing that great role. And what you're seeing here is just something that I've just grabbed from LinkedIn, of all places, but it's just one of those places where you can go to obviously to find your next great role, or to think about, where am I going to go next? But it's not all about things like that. It's not all about jumping onto job boards and applying for things or looking at certain roles and trying to work out whether it's the right role for you. What I want to do today is to get into areas about thinking about your career, thinking about things like the resume, and actually how do you land a great PMO career. So lots of things to think about. No doubt you'll be you taking notes, but just a little bit more about why I'm here today talking to you. I mean, a great intro, but it's not just a recruitment background that I come from. There's obviously that PMO stuff as well. And as you can see from this intro, that we have things called PMO Flash Mob, which is the networking and learning group for people. We have PMO Conference, we have PMO Learning, which is about training. So lots of different things that I've just been immersed in the whole PMO stuff for a number of years now. And I'm going to bring all that here today in this session. As much as I can. There's a lot to get through, so let's get with it. So you want a great PMO career, but where do you start with this? A really interesting thing over the years, when from back in the day when I first started working in PMOs and in that Wild West, we're not there anymore. PMOs exploded over that time, and there's so many different types of careers to have in PMO. So many different types of PMO. And obviously lots of organizations are either looking to start with a PMO, some of them are quite mature in their PMOs, had them for a number of years. So there's lots of different things to be thinking about when you're thinking about you as an individual, but also, what kind of career you're looking for, and also what kind of organization you're ideally looking for. And it can feel like a bit, where do I start with all of this? One of the problems we've found over the years is that there's quite a lot of frustration around the whole finding jobs, getting jobs, interviews, all that kind of good stuff. And what I've kind of distilled it down to is that it's on the PMO side, so PMO practitioner side, your side, is that there's a certain amount of frustration in terms of being able to get across what it is that you do, what it is that you offer. But on the organisation side, we have certainly seen that they find it very difficult to articulate what kind of PMO person it is that they're looking for. So if you've got two of those sides, the PMO practitioners struggling to see, well, which bits of my experience do they want to see? which bits are going to be useful for their organisation, which bits add value. Yet you have organisations that are find it difficult to try and, well, how do I articulate exactly what kind of PMO person I'm looking for? So we're still there, and there's a certain amount of frustration. So from an organisation's point of view, they also find it quite difficult when we're looking at things like resumes and profiles and things to try and work out exactly who you are and whether you're going to add value to their organisation in a PMO role. So with that, what I want to start off with is thinking about, these are the 4 things that we're going to kind of cover in this session. Okay, so we're going to start off with, what have you got? So if we think about the frustrations in the whole PMO career thing of, well, what is it that I've got to offer? That's what we're going to get into first of all, to ask you a few questions and to get you thinking about what it is that you've actually got. Then we're going to have a look at, tell me what it is you've got. So that's more about the show. So tell me in terms of, how do you articulate in terms of your resume, interviews and things like that. Then I'm going to push back again and say, are you sure that's what you've got? And then finally, and are you sure that's where you're heading? So we'll talk a little bit more about where you think your PMO career is heading, should be heading, and other things to think about in terms of longevity of a PMO career and where you could be going. So that's what we're going to get covered up in the session. And as I say, if you've got a notebook and a pen, you'll probably find it handy to perhaps jot down some of your thoughts as we go through this. And I'm sure you'll be able to do a catch-up later on as well, because there's quite a lot of information coming your way. So let's get started. So what is it that you've got? You've got a lot to sell, let's face it. So we've got skills, experience, knowledge, training, qualifications, tool sets, behaviours and mindsets. These are ultimately the things that an organisation is looking to buy from you. In other words, when they hire you, whether it be in a permanent role or a contract role, these are some of the things that they are looking for. These are the things that they're hunting for. But the problem is, so hold there a second, because actually, what are these things exactly? So what are the skills they're looking for? How do they want to see your skills actually displayed so they can understand what those skills are and have a think, okay, so our PMO role, we're looking for this kind of skill set, and can I clearly see that kind of skill set in your resume or profile? There'll be experience, will be experiences that you've gained in different organisations may not be clearly articulated for another organisation that's looking for a new PMO manager. So we're going to think differently about what experience do we have and how do we convey that to potentially a new organisation. We all have knowledge, but again, what kind of knowledge do you have around PMO? About the functions and services that it offers and processes and all that kind of good stuff. We'll take a look at that and we'll think about how do we actually display that when we come to do a profile or to write a career history in a resume. We'll also touch on things like the training and the qualifications, because what we've found over the years is that in the early days, there's not much out there in terms of training that you can do to demonstrate your knowledge and experience levels in your chosen field. And then this is something that you see a lot in project managers, that they have a lot of options in terms of what kind of training they do, not to show people that I've got the PMP and therefore I'm a great project manager. It's more that they do things like that to kind of back up and show people I'm a project management, I'm professional, and these are some of the professional qualifications that I've got. And we want to think about that as well when it comes to the world of PMO, because it is growing up, it is maturing, and there are things out there, and there are things that, again, organisations would like to see, because it demonstrates quite a lot. We'll talk about that a little bit later too. And then we have things like our tool sets, and what is it as a PMO professional that we know and do and love and are experts in using. Again, those tool sets, we need to be able to convey that to organisations that we want to work for. And behaviours and mindset, we kind of lump those together, because ultimately that's the cherry on the cake. When you put your skills, experience, knowledge and all those things together, it is about the behaviour, what we see from you, how we see things from you, and what your mindset is and your attitude. So all of those things are what make us up in terms of the career that we have and what we have to sell when it comes to actually thinking about a role in PMO. Now, what I'm going to ask you are 5 questions just to get you thinking about you as an individual and your career so far in PMO. Okay. So the 5 questions that I put together are something that I use with people when I do coaching and one-to-one sessions about if you're thinking about me and my career to date, how can I, what kind of things do I really need to think about that people would want to hire me for? And often it's interesting to have a question thrown at you that will make you think about those things and try and draw it out of you. And what I call it is kind of like a personal stock taking. It's like trying to understand on your market store, what is it that you've got to sell? So let's just have a look at some of these questions and get you thinking and what's important. So first of all, what makes you a credible candidate? So you're wanting a role in a new role in PMO, better role in PMO, a career step up from an analyst to a PMO leader, manager, director, whatever it is. Ask the question, what makes you a credible candidate to an organisation that's looking for the ideal role that you want? So some of the things here are just to get you to jot down and to think about. And incidentally, when you do this kind of answering to these questions, it actually helps you to form your resume later on in the process. And I'm kind of taking you through that process. So the kind of evidence you'd include in terms of what makes me credible would be things like your accreditation, your qualifications, your years experience, and things like your domain. So what do you mean by domain? And sometimes people get it mixed up with things like industry sector. So your domain would be that you're a PMO within an IT department or HR or business transformation. That's different to obviously to your industry sector, which might be financial services or health or whatever. So you start to think about, well, what's making me a credible candidate for the roles that are out there? There's further questions that now delve a little bit deeper into what we mean by that credible candidate. So first of all, it's like, what level is the support service that you're offering in this PMO career that you're looking for? Because there are so many different types of PMOs around, but fundamentally, the way that we see it, the way that I see it, is that there's about 4, and then mix and match and all that kind of good stuff. So we've got a project-related PMO level, you've got program, you have portfolio, and there's that enterprise level, which may also include something like centre of excellence type models. So it's about understanding, well, for me, in where I am in my career today, if I am I've developed a lot of my experience in the program side around PMO, it's exactly, what is it that I've offered? What is it that I've built up in terms of specialisms? What have I got really excel at doing in that field around program type PMOs? And again, if you're then thinking about, well, my next step in my career might be to look beyond up to maybe a portfolio type PMOs. So I need to be able to start to understand that if I do my personal stock take today about where I am, later on down the line, you can start to think about, well, I want to start to move more towards a portfolio or the enterprise type PMO. What kind of things do I need to be thinking about there? But this is just about what kind of support service you're already offering. Because again, if it's a portfolio type PMO, then it might be more of a strategic type of role. So doing that kind of project and program prioritization type work around portfolios, or it may be the kind of data management, data analysis, interpretation, that kind of work. So again, you're trying to crystallize what it is that you have, because too many PMO people, and it comes to, and what is interesting when you go to things like a flash mob, you're in a room with a lot of PMO people. What you normally do when you're in a networking type event, there's lots of different types of people, normally a lot of project managers. You probably introduce yourself as, I'm a PMO analyst, I'm a PMO manager. Actually, it doesn't wash at a PMO flash mob because people do know the granularity of, okay, so what kind of PMO is it? And it's that we want from you. We want to know what kind of PMO it is that you're working within, because it's that what organisations are trying to understand that you've got, because they've got a similar kind of setup, or that's a similar kind of way they want to go with their PMO. So it's getting into the granularity of, well, what is the service that you're offering? So another way to look at this is, well, what are the service offerings of the PMO? So, you can talk about if you're working in an enterprise type PMO, actually a lot of the services that we offer are mainly around reporting, data analysis, but also doing things like scenario planning. For example, that's the stuff that you want to know, and that's how we'll all use later on in the resume. The next question, so what's the most important aspect of the support service to senior management? This is getting into that stuff where everybody's talking about it at the moment in terms of, what value does the PMO bring to an organisation? We want to understand what senior managers want from their PMO, so the PMO can actually offer what it is that those people want. So again, we start to think more deeper, perhaps into a bigger picture stuff about what is the most important aspect of the stuff that you're doing to senior management. So not necessarily to the project organisation, the project managers and all that kind of stuff, but what is it to the senior management? Because we want you to get you thinking about the most important aspects of the PMO in terms of the kind of things it gives to senior management. And again, here are some of the things that you may see in your experience. And actually from a senior management point of view, we actually do a lot around governance. Or from a senior management point of view, we're doing a lot of the kind of, exception type reporting stuff. That's what they want to know. Or it's more of a project prioritization stuff, but they want to be able to see, well, what's the link between what we've set around strategy and what's being delivered. Whatever it is, I want you to make some notes about what is the most important aspect of what you're doing today that is aimed for the senior management and the execs that you're serving. And what types of processes and tools are important in your support service? This is when we're now starting to get into organisations again. From a PMO point of view, these are the kind of things that they want to know. These are the kind of things that allow them to make a decision of, actually, this person's PMO career is very similar to what we're looking for. Not 100% perfect, but they're actually talking about a lot of the processes and tools and stuff that we want or have got, or, that's what we're looking to do in the future. So again, it might be stuff like enterprise PPM, and you can build a career for the next 15, 20 years in that alone, if you so wanted. From a contract point of view, you could probably pick up contract after contract after contract by being an enterprise PPM tool specialist around the old PMO role. But there's the specialisms that start to come out. But actually, you probably today don't even think it's a specialism. I'm telling you now, but it is. But again, it's what is the types of processes and tools that are important in the services that you offer today and the role that you perform today. Again, we want to know about that. I mean, that, for example, the bullet point there around methodologies. If you're already starting to build up some experience around those agile methods, those lean methods, you know that you're going to be somebody that is potentially going to be in demand somewhere else, if not now, but certainly in the future, an immediate future, because that's what's happening right now in project delivery world. So again, it's getting you to think about what it is you've got. It's that personal stock take, yeah? And then finally, what makes you successful in your support service? Now, this is an interesting one. So also, what makes you successful as an individual working within a PMO, but also to think about the success of the support that you provide as a PMO and as a PMO member. So there's two subtleties there. But again, we don't often think about success very much. We're often too deep down in the day job. But if we're thinking about carving out a great PMO career for ourselves, sometimes a little trumpet blowing is necessary. So what we need you to think about here is success, but we also need to think about failure. And I'm sure I'm not alone in thinking there's probably quite a few failures that you can think of. But what we're interested in here is, how do we turn failure around? How do we learn from it? How did that failure push us on to the next step or a different direction? Yeah. What adversity have we had? Because I know, every single PMO person I've ever met, they've always had some adversity. Again, we want to know about that, because it's these kind of things that will make you more successful in your career. Very suspicious of anybody that says that they've never had any knockbacks, failures, or adversity in a PMO role. And if you haven't, genuinely, get in touch with me, because you deserve a trophy. I don't know. Anyway. But also, it's in terms of successes, is thinking about, well, what about your personality? What was it about you that made a difference in what it is that you've been doing in your career? But also just think about the way that you do that. Now, the questions you think, well, why am I answering these questions? Why am I writing this kind of stuff down and making some notes? Because ultimately, these are the things that organisations want to hear about. And we said right at the top of the session, that it's often that we think we know what they want to hear, And actually, well, I'm telling you, these are the things they want to hear. I want you to think more about them. Okay. Now I want to a bit about, so tell me what it is that you've got. Now this is the nightmare that people have around the whole PMO, resume, or just writing a resume generally. We've all got a bit of a love-hate relationship, and I hope that I can try and get you to feel more of a love relationship with it, because it's going to be such a big part of your career is having something that really does open doors or starts conversations or gets interviews, or that it's something that we can't ignore. And I'd really like you to fall in love with it a little bit and actually enjoy writing them and bringing out the things that you've got. There are actually some questions before about the kind of things that you are going to be putting in there. I just want to talk through some of the stories or examples that I have that kind of show what it is that PMO people do today, and then actually how a few tweaks can make you do so much better with it. So you're failing to show me what skills. So let's start at the very beginning. The bit that most people focus on when it comes to a resume is the first page. Okay, so in the recruitment world, most people, when they're looking at a resume, so from a recruitment agent point of view or a hiring manager, they don't actually read CVs. When they open up a CV, they do not read it in entirety. It's just like you picking up a newspaper. You look at the headlines. If there's something there in the headlines that makes you want to read on, you'll probably read the first paragraph, which is normally in bold and a slightly bigger font. You'll read that bit. And if you like what you see there, you'll tend to read a little bit more into it. Exactly the same thing with the CV. So what we say when we start with it at the very beginning, we want to talk about the bit in the profile, the bit that actually gets glanced at first. This is the kind of headline, so you've got your name and location and all that kind of stuff. It's the profile that kind of sets the scene, that gets people hooked and that you want them to read on a little bit further, okay? So the profile, these are the things, and I've come up with it. You've been in recruitment for many years around PMO, looking at PMO CVs, to actually come up with some way that actually is more of a hook and a grabbing profile than a lot of the ones that we see, which are normally things like, this is me, I'm a great team leader, all of that kind of stuff, the fluffy stuff, I'm a great communicator. And actually people, you probably realise that a lot of people like the same thing. So it kind of loses its individuality straight away. So this is not what we want when we're trying to get people to talk to us. So we're talking very much now about the resume, about a piece of paper, or indeed a LinkedIn profile. So we're trying to get that. It's almost like thinking about what's my elevator pitch. So literally, what is my one paragraph elevator pitch? And if you're not clear about an elevator pitch is, it's that story about, you've only got so many seconds or minutes. You get into a lift with a senior exec and you've only got a few seconds or minutes to tell them about a project that you might be running or supporting, and you're wanting them to do some action of some kind. So you've only got a certain amount of time as you go up in the elevator. So it's exactly something that's short, sharp, concise, and contains all those words that we know that an hiring organisation is trying to find out about you like that. So when we look at things like with a profile, we have a kind of, I suppose, a kind of a format for it. So we always start off with the job titles. And it's interesting, again, with a PMO career, you often find different job titles, different organisations and what have you. So with a profile, you are able to actually change some of your titles, because what you're trying to do is show who you are to different audiences. So it's fine to have that if you're a PMO manager, that you could have PMO manager / lead PMO or PMO lead, for example. If you're working in as an analyst type role, you may have PMO analyst, project office, support office, something like that. So you can put many titles in, because actually what you're trying to do here is also fitting with the way that recruitment works, which is actually a lot of the time today, especially with things like LinkedIn and job boards, they're trying to find you using keywords. That can be a problem sometimes in terms of the PMO marketplace, because we might have different terms for different roles, different titles. So actually it's okay in your profile to put a couple. What we also want to see is it's very qualification led. So we do want to see qualification, But any PMO professional or practitioner today, I want to see that you're passionate about this, that this is a career for you, that this is something where you are showing and demonstrating your professionalism to your chosen career. And qualifications are one way to be able to demonstrate that. But also, we obviously know that taking qualifications are going to come very handy in the actual doing of the role, which we'll talk about later. But again, we want to see qualifications. And we absolutely want to see where you've got that experience so far. So it's that industry sector stuff, we want to see that. But also, we're back to this area around domain. So if you've been a PMO in kind of a program, like a business transformation type program, that's the domain, and that's the kind of stuff we want to see. And then we want to get into some of the specialisms. And now you can see some of the questions that I've asked you before helped to start to think about, what am I selling? What's the market story here? What am I offering? And specialisms are a great thing for PMO because, let's face it, PMO in itself is a specialism within project management. But we know that there are certain types of PMOs that do certain things. So that's the kind of specialisms of what we want to bring out. In other words, we want to see all the good stuff. So we want facts, and we don't want the fluffy stuff about things like being a great team leader or being a great communicator. I mean, what does that mean anyway? So those are the kind of things that we want to see that are very fact-based and often are written in the third person because that's the way that we tend to write things in a professional way these days. So what you're seeing right now is an example of exactly what I've just talked about, but it's very fact-based. So here we're leading with some qualifications, we've put the job titles there. We're talking about the years experience that we have in the sectors that we've been working within. So that's talk about some specialisms here about your experience in PMO design and implementation for both program and portfolio level PMOs. We've managed some people, but again, it's fact-based. I'm not just a team leader, I'm telling you I've managed these people. And also, here's some of the specialisms responsible for, and those things there, you can see, are very, very enticing. And that there are organisations that are exactly looking for this kind of stuff right now. So that's what I'm trying to get you to do, is think about that profile, that impact statement that is saying all the right kind of things. So again, it's not easy, but I'm sure you can have a few iterations with it, but also try and reach out to some of your PMO peers and colleagues. I'm sure we'll be able to have a look at it with you as well. It's good fun to try and come up with it. I'm hoping by this point you're itching to get on and have a go at it. Because I know that most people, when they see this, just go like, oh, this is the kind of stuff, it makes total sense. Why am I not doing it already? But yeah, it's fine, you're listening then. So hopefully you can go away and feel a bit fired up on how you can make a difference with that. We can't obviously go into the entire CV, but I could talk for like 6 hours on it. But I'm sure you don't want to listen to all of that right now, because a lot of people actually want to hear about it on an individual personal basis, because they all think that my career history, my experience and knowledge of stuff is unique to me. And it is to a point, but there are certain types of ways of being able to write about your PMO experience that is very similar amongst people, because of course it has to be, because that's that's how people in recruitment work. Is that an organisation is looking for X, it's got a job spec, and then they're hoping to receive quite a lot of CVs that have those kind of skills in it. So there's actually a lot of similarities across PMO people's CVs. So what I wanted to focus on is what I call the shop window, which is the first page of a resume or CV. And when we talk about, what's important here, you spend most of your time developing that front page, because that is what's most important. In terms of career history, it's what you've been doing now, and it's what you've been doing most recently over the last 5 years. That's where I really want to put your efforts into writing some really great stuff that demonstrate exactly who you are and what it is and what you've got to offer. So if you look at career history, these are the kind of things that we're talking about and what it is that we'd like to see. So with a CV for a PMO person, context is everything because of the different types of PMOs that are available. If you were just to write a career history that says, I manage a PMO, it's not going to help people to make a decision, not only about you, But equally, it's not going to allow you to put your best foot forward in order to be able to demonstrate the number of wonderful years experience you've got, the number of managerial roles you've had, the level of seniority that you've enjoyed, the complexity of what you've done, all of those things that will show organisations that you're ready for a more senior role, or a role that deserves a 15, 20, 25, 30% pay rise. It's the context is where we start, because people need to understand, what am I looking at here? You can find a PMO manager with that title, and they can be working within an organisation where there is no real PMO setup, but it's a PMO, and it's a PMO of one person, and they're just coordinating a few projects. Quite a junior level role. But we can also have a PMO manager that could actually be heading up an enterprise level, multi-million pound role. So that's why the context is important. So when it comes to writing your career history, we actually advise people to do an introduction to the PMO that they're working within. So give me some insights on what this PMO is. Provide me with a second thing, it's a mental picture. You know, for people that have, obviously I've been there and know what kind of PMOs we're talking about, but there's often people in the recruitment chain that don't really know and understand that much about PMOs. You probably come across it yourself. So we need to make sure that what we're writing is good for a team leader, so somebody very experienced in PMO will totally obviously get what you're writing, but sometimes there's a few hoops to jump through. So you may be looking at an HR department, recruitment administrator, maybe looking at that CV and doing the first sift through. So this is that person, and do they understand it, and are we giving them the right stuff, as well as going into some detail around some of the things that are going to facilitate a team lead and giving them enough detail. So the context would be something like that. You give them an idea of if it's a program level PMO, you would talk about what's the program about. You know, what is it that it's there to do? You may then start to include that if you're an analyst within that program PMO, you may talk about how many colleagues do you have? What's the size of that program in terms of budget and span of control? So how many people are working on that program in the entirety? You know, all those different people working across all those multiple projects. How big is it? Let's have a feel for that. How risky is it? How complex has it been? How big is the change that you're delivering in that program? What does it mean to the organisation? Just give us something that allows us to get that mental picture. And that is the biggest tip in terms of how do I make sure that the roles that I go for are matching me in terms of seniority. And often it comes down to this context. It is about how big they are, how risky they are, how complex they are, and so on. So that's where you do it. So you introduce the context of the real type of PMO. And then you're into functions and services. And hopefully you kind of got that language now around PMOs. I'm just going to assume just for a second that there's some people that are listening that perhaps don't get that. And what we mean by PMO functions and services are, what are the functions that we offer as a PMO to the business? So for example, a functional area would be reporting. Yeah, so the PMO provides reports to the organisation and to project managers, to various people, various stakeholders. But reporting is a function. So a service within that function would be, for example, that we create weekly status reports. That's a service offering within the function of reporting. So that's what we mean by showing functions and services. Okay, so it's a classic that if you think about your PMO and where your experience has been, you think about all the functional areas that your PMO offers. And then next level down, you can start to think, well, what are the services we offer? And four, we're on to showing about skills and the competencies that allow us to deliver those services and functions. Yeah, got it? So really great way about doing that. It allows somebody who's reading that resume to be able to start to pinpoint some of the things that they've actually asked in the roles and responsibilities in their job ad. Yeah? So you're writing it in a very clear and contextual way, and they can make a real judgment call on, well, actually, you know, one of the functional areas may be around putting in place a project management delivery framework, methodologies and that kind of stuff. That's your functional area. So what are some of the services involved in that? Yeah. one of the things I would advise you to have a look at if you just want to get into thinking about functions and services and what different kinds of things there are, because often what I find is that people are too busy doing the job sometimes. And actually what's really useful to look at is, okay, so this is my PMO, my role, and I think we do these functions, I think we do these services. What's always good is to have some kind of best practice to look at. And one of the things we always talk about at FlashMob is getting out the P3O manual, which stands for Project Program and Portfolio Office guidance, which is it's big in the UK, and they have a guidance, a handbook, so you can have a look at that on Amazon. But one of the bits about it in the back end of the book is Appendix F or D, I can never remember. But essentially, right in the back of that book is a list of all the different types of PMOs. So Project, Program, Portfolio, Centre of Excellence. It has all of those types of PMOs. And then it has all the functional areas that you would find in those PMOs and then all the services. It's a great exercise to do to kind of like rationalise what it is that you have experience-wise and say, actually I can do a bit of mapping here. This is good. I can start to see that actually, yeah, we do offer that service. I would never have called it that though, but yes, I can see it. So that is a great exercise to do, and I really recommend that you do that. But of course, there are other things out there in the web to take a look for PMO functions and services. I'm sure you'll also be able to find some free resources as well. But coming back to career history then, so it's about seniority is important. If you are making that leap, especially from being an analyst to a PMO manager, or from a PMO manager up to a PMO director, or a more senior role within an organisation around PMO, is about seniority. And one of the ways that we show seniority is with things like, the size of the operation, the PMO that you have been working in or supporting. It is about being the amount of people that you've been managing, or the span of control that you've had. So it doesn't necessarily have to be direct reports, but it's that span of control that you've had. It is about complexity and riskiness of what it is that you've been supporting. In seniority terms, it also is about how much is this valued by an organisation. If you are the head of a PMO, that is responsible for £100 million or dollars of change coming through an organisation, it's those kind of things that need to be prominent. Okay, and of course we've got achievements as well. So if there's stuff that you've been particularly proud of, achievements is one of the best ways to be able to link up profile at the top of the resume, career history here, and the key achievements that you have right in the middle. Because those are the things that you can tweak and change depending on what role it is that you want to go for. You see a job advertisement out there and it's looking for X, Y, and Z, and there's certain stories and experiences you had where you really made a difference and really stood out. Those are the kind of things that you can put in your key achievements, because you've got a job ad here, here's your resume, here they're looking for this kind of stuff. In my career achievements, actually I'm showing very prominently that I've done exactly what it is that you're looking for here, and I've done it in a fantastic way. Yeah. So hopefully you're feeling a bit more pumped up and a bit more, I want to have a good go at this. I'm going to scratch my CV. I'm going to start again from fresh and see what I can do and come up with. But just remember, if you've got a 3-page CV or you've been around the block a few times, actually the most important things we're interested in is the last 5 years. That's the things where people will really look, and those are the things that get you the job interview or open the crack in the door. Those are the things that people want to talk to you about. So the other stuff in your CV, yes, it's important. It shows the journey. It shows how you've got to where you are today. But it becomes less important. So actually, with the stuff that goes back in your career, it becomes shorter and shorter because giving you more room for the stuff that's really important, which is what you've been doing more recently. So just remember, first page, short window, and you won't go far wrong. So are you sure that's what you've got? Now, what's really interesting about this in terms of PMO is there's been a lot of changes, and I talked about it at the top of the hours, about the things about the training and development side of it. There's been big changes in PMO, and if you've been working in PMO for a while, and especially if you're moving up the ladder, you can't ignore training and development today. Absolutely not. Let's have a look at something that we've devised through PMO learning, which is the training side of what we're doing. And here you can see what we see in our world, in the UK, in terms of the types of people that have a career in PMO today. This is how they kind of loosely, break down in terms of career levels. So we have those people at level 1, which are very much either new, they've been working in a project admin, project support officer type role. They're new in their career, first couple of years or so. Then we're getting into people that are supporting at portfolio, program and project level, and they tend to be the kind of PMO analysts, project coordinators, senior project coordinators, that kind of stuff. So they're supporting either individual projects, or could be working within a project office type PMO or portfolio office, whatever. Level 3, you're getting into the kind of PMO manager, PMO lead type role, and these people generally are managing PMOs that are either project, program or portfolio type PMOs. And the one right at the top are the managing and directing and leading PMOs are ones that are working at that more senior level, the enterprise PMO across the entire organisation. It's quite a senior level role. Now, what we find a lot of the time is that, just I suppose with project managers as well, is that a lot of people have built up their knowledge and experience over the years without any of that kind of formal learning and development and training and so on. One of the things I would say, though, is what we find that when you come to a certain level in your career, especially if you're wanting to go freelance or consulting or being a contractor, it's the training aspects of it that you're able to draw on. And I find this really important in terms of PMOs. In the PMO world today, you're seeing 2 types. Let's talk about the leadership role for a minute. You see 2 types. You see people that are really interested in setting up PMOs, and you see people that are really interested in running them, in evolving them, maturing them. So there's 2 very different career paths. So from a contract consultant point of view, you get a lot of people who are interested. I'm just interested getting into an organisation, understanding what they're trying to do, pulling together lots of different practices that I've got from not only from my own experiences, because I'm also pulling it from the training I've received and how much I'm reading around the subject, because there's so much stuff coming out from research worlds at the moment around PMOs. It's this kind of role that if you're interested in setup, new PMOs to organisations, you have to have a lot of sources to draw on. That's what makes those people really great at what they're doing and finding a great PMO career around that. What doesn't work well is if you've only worked in a couple of, maybe 1 or 2 organisations and seen 2 different types of PMOs. It's not good for a contract and freelance and consultancy type role, because you need to draw on lots of different types of things. You need that kind of tool bag to open and say, these are the things I've seen from my experiences and research and best practice. These are the things that we're going to work with. So it's certainly something, but if you're wanting to be working at the top end of your field, is the ability to be able to pull on different kinds of good practice that are from lots of different types of places. And I think the training aspects of it, certainly with what's available now, and I'll show you a little bit about what's available in the UK, just to show you how those levels and what's available. It's important, I think, now that PMO is not the Wild West anymore. There are actually things out there that we are able to do as PMO professionals that say, I do this job and I've been doing it for 10, 15, 20 years, or 2 years, 1 year. This is the path that I'm on. I care passionately about this job and what I'm doing. I really want organisations to do well in terms of delivering projects and programmes. I'm prepared to put, some of my personal development to be the best that I can at what I'm doing, and to get this from different places is in good practice. So what you're seeing here is just some of the things that in the UK, this is the UK market that we're looking at here, but in those 4 levels that you can see that there's 3 different certification options. These are courses that are actually certified by bodies, which is, you've got there on the left-hand side, which is British Computer Society, which is the Chartered Institute for IT here in the UK. They have 2 at different levels. Mentioned already P3O, that's one that came out of the initial, same stable as Prince 2, which you probably will have heard of. And then the one there on the far right, for international PMOs, and they have 3 levels. So those things that check out, but also You know, we know that training and development and personal development around PMOs, there's a lot of resources out there. You're listening to this right now, which is going to give you stacks of stuff. Do more of it, find more of it, and learn more about your craft and your trade. Because like I said, it's not the Wild West anymore. If you're going to put yourself there in terms of, I'd like to develop my career as a PMO consultant, one of the first things that somebody like me would ask is tell me about the sources that you're drawing on. We have this particular type of problem in an organisation, and this is the solution that we think we're looking for. What will you bring to the table, and where will you bring that from? That's the kind of level that we want to be getting at. If you're at that senior 3-4 level in your career, I want to see that kind of seriousness and considered, but you're not just doing it because you've just joined. Oh, I've set up a couple of PMOs before. I'm just going to do the same thing again. No, not going to work. The training and the development side of your career is going to take you a lot further than if you just keep on moving from job to job and taking your development from the organisation that you work in. PMO is very unique to organisations. So chances are that you may only have had experience of 1 or 2 PMOs that actually may not be very similar to anything else that's out there. Who knows? You don't know. So it's about being able to look at what is considered to be good best practice that's out there and what you can learn on that, and more importantly, what you can probably use in your day job today to build up your experience with that before you potentially move on later on in your career. Let's have a look at a typical job ad for a sec. So this is going back now to thinking about the knotty problem that we. So I'm trying to get a good, I want to be able to show what I've got here, and an area and organisation can look at that. So yeah, it's very clear about what they probably can make a judgment call on that. Let's have a look at the process very quickly about, well, if you see a job ad for a PMO role, I don't know about you, but sometimes you see them, you think, well, that's just not really clear. If it is fairly clear, how do I then use that job ad to be able to put my best foot forward? Okay. So, for example, this is one here. Can we see evidence of this kind of experience in a resume? If you look at what you see here, is just the first paragraph of a job ad. The job ad was, a lot longer. It went into roles and responsibilities, which we'll see in a bit. But this is the top bit here. When you look at these kind of things, what do you see? Do we see the same things? Yeah. So, for example, I see that word first, and I think, okay, so it's change and improvement function. So, change is a big thing for this particular role. Customers are important in this thing. Saying that we have a foundation to resource. So, resourcing is an interesting one as well, and it's the role that this is for is this change portfolio management office. Okay, so we know that this is the kind of level of PMO that it is. So already we've got our highlighted pen out and thinking, right, okay, so what are the key things here that they're really looking for? And I'm going to start thinking about, well, number one, I'm reading this now, and is this the right kind of role for me? Because if I can't really offer anything in these, you just say, well, scratch that one, you're not going to go for it. But if you have got portfolio management experience, for example, what is it that you're going to be able to pick out that you're also going to make sure that you have in your resume to be able to pull some stuff out? So you know that in your resume, there's going to have to be something around, maybe in the profile about portfolio management office. There maybe needs to be something around change or customers or resource management, for example. Just give you some ideas. So if you look a little further, these are the key responsibilities that were in that job ad. And again, I've just pulled out some of the things that I'm like thinking, okay, one I see as being the things that they're really looking for. So you get into this thing, if you see so many of them, which I have over the years, you start to think, okay, what's important here? And actually, you're only looking, so if you have like roles and responsibilities like this, you're only looking at the top 5. I mean, there could be 10, 15, but then probably those, these are the ones that are going to make a difference to whether you get put in the door. Because we know that not everybody's got everything. The problem is when you start to look at, I've got the top bullet point, but I've only got like 11, 12 and 13. Yeah, but in which case, it's like maybe not going for it. So these are the things that I pulled out for this particular role. But again, if you think about the resume thing that we've been through, do I talk about the team that I lead of analysts, for example? Do I talk about, in terms of the functions and services, do I talk about governance? Again, something there. do I talk about portfolio management frameworks? We come back to this function around methodologies and frameworks and stuff, what we got in there. And you can see there that resource planning starts to come in as well, which we got that hint in the initial opening paragraph. And then on to the skills, again, we're looking at, have I got stuff around the key skills that they're looking for? And again, are they clear in what it is that I've got on my resume? So this is a question about, when we said about softer skills and stuff like that, really, really difficult to be able to convey that in a CV. But what we say is when it comes to things like the skills, actually having something like a strong communicator or being able to build relationships, the profile is not the place to do them. Actually, what is more powerful is when you use communication in your functions and services. It's when you use things like the building of relationships and influencing, when you put it against things like stakeholders and senior exec. So again, in your functions and services, it has a bigger impact than it does if you just plonk it up there in your profile at the top and say I'm a great communicator. So again, reading the job ads is a case of, right, this is an interesting one because you get a lot of people, but when you put a job ad out and they'll apply for the job and then you reject them because you can't see the experience at all. And they ring up and they say, well, I've clearly got this experience, I've done this, I've done that. And you actually say to them, show me where it is in the CV. And they can't. It's up here. It's in their experience. It's there. Just didn't bother to put it down on the paper. Or thought it was there or whatever. So what we say is that for each role you're going for, each serious role, it can only ever be a handful of roles available for you at that moment in time in your career. It can only ever be a few. So why not put your best foot forward for each one of those few roles that are going to come your way? And again, it's about being able to really look at that job advertisement and to think that, okay, I think I've got this. Can I see it in the CV? Can I just double check that? So it's just thinking about, you think you've got something, but can I see it? Yeah. It's just that mental check. And finally, coming to the last bit, it's just thinking about, are you sure that's where you're heading? Now, and I'm biased, I get it, love PMO, but it's never been a better time to have a career around PMO. It's going to go amazing places. I'm saying, here we are in 2018. In 2028, it's going to be a completely different space. Still amazing, but we've got a great journey ahead of us coming. Absolutely. But again, sometimes I think with the PMO stuff, and I don't know if it's just the types of PMO people that you get at certain levels, is that often people are willing to just drift. We'll see what happens. I'm a bit fed up with this PMO because our senior execs don't really sponsor it, they don't really listen to us, but we just carry on banging our head against it more. There's always going to be people like that. But if you really want to take your career with two hands, it's thinking about where you're actually heading and where those opportunities are now, next week, next year, next 10 years. This is the stuff that we need to be thinking about right now. So I just wanted to just throw a few things that should get you thinking about this. And this is what we see, especially with PMO people, is this whole paternalism in terms of career caretakers. And we see this a lot. And it kind of relates to what we're talking about with the training stuff and getting the bigger picture of PMO best practice. Not the organisation's best practice around PMOs, but the bigger best practice around PMOs. Because there's a lot of people doing some great stuff. So just because your organisation may be on its track to maturity, but it's not there yet, there are other things if you expand and look around and think, I'm not just going to take the training courses that are offered to me, but actually I'm going to go out there and do some research and say, to my line manager, I've done some research around this particular thing, this particular course. I'd like to do it because I think it will give our, more ideas into how we can further develop our PMO, rather than letting the company lead your career all the time. Because I really do believe that, we're organized. Well, we know, but you don't have a career for life with one organisation. And what I really wouldn't like people to do around PMOs is to get stuck into, I've only ever got one experience of one type of PMO, but there is so much to explore and so many different types of PMOs to explore. And I do want you to expand your thinking and listen to things like this and best practice that's out there. But I think especially with the PMO stuff, going places that it seems a shame, but you might just be blinkered to where you are now and not see those potentials for yourself. You need to get out there, which is what we do with Flash Bombs, get people talking to each other from different organisations, and suddenly, their eyes are wide open, because it's like, I never realised, our PMO does this. I never realised that Joe Bloggs down the street in a different bank is doing all these wonderful things. How do we not know that? That's the kind of thing that we're talking about. And an accidental career is that I think a lot of us do, which is you just go from one thing to another, which is fine if you look, if you're lucky, but actually at some point your luck's going to run out. It's about, taking an intentional career, is what we call it in the career coaching field, is when you actually take ownership of what it is that you're doing, because it's about being able to, what we've done today is understand what it is that you've got. What is it that you would love to do? What is the ideal thing you would love to be doing? But actually, you need to understand what it is that you've got already. And from that, there's a gap. And that's the learning agenda. That's the bits that you need to get from where you are today to where you think you maybe want to be in the future. And sometimes, it is about being able to experiment with stuff and practice new things. And I think the PMO is a great way to do that. It's a great field to be in, to be able to do. What do we hear all the time? Things are changing really fast. We're having to adapt and change. It's digitalized. It's going at 100 miles an hour. Could there be a better time to be able to think about, well, where do we go with our PMO? How do we better support our organisations as it's going through big changes? Can we do experiments? Can we practice new things? That, hey ho, we do it after a couple of years. I'm out the door because I've got another brilliant career down the street. Who knows? But those are the kind of things that, can we take ownership rather than just going along with the status quo? And ultimately, if you're going to do these kind of things, can we find a support network? Can we get support? It's not just in the organisation that you're in today. I think you're probably guessing from what you're signed up to and listening to today that there are other things out there to help you build that confidence and to also kind of help you navigate in directions. So thinking about them from a career point of view, it's not always about the steps I must go up and up and up. I always see it's not a career ladder, it is a bit of a climbing wall, because sometimes you do take those twists and turns. And a classic case in point, and I might get shut down by a lot of people, but I believe that if you're wanting to progress and be an enterprise level PMO person, actually if I look at some of the better people in those positions today, I can see that actually they've come from a project manager, program manager, and then they've come back into that kind of governance and PMO type role. So they've come from a delivery role and come up, and they've skipped, they haven't come up this career ladder of project support, analyst, manager. They've literally come from a delivery angle, and then they've come across into the whole PMO and running an enterprise level PMO. So that's not, what we would see as a classic stepped career. And I don't believe that also happens with people in PMOs. So you can start in a PMO, and actually you may go and deliver projects for a few years, but actually in your heart of hearts, the PMO it will always be, and actually your plan is to always come back. But actually you want that kind of hands-on delivery experience, because it might make you a better PMO manager because you understand the other side of the fence and all that kind of stuff. So again, it's not thinking about onwards and upwards all the time. Sometimes a sideways move, perhaps from project and PMO, maybe into a business analyst role, because that might maybe make you better coming back into a PMO role later on down the line to do things like more formal process design of services, for example. So 4 questions. What I want you to think about is, how do you define career success for yourself? What kind of work do you want to do? What do you actually want to achieve in your career? And what talents do you want to leverage? These are things that I want you to think about, because often we don't take a step back. But equally, when we get a question like that, I can't be bothered. It's too much like hard work. But if you're really serious about developing your career, and I'm hoping that passion for me is coming across and giving you a bit more, that there is a lot of opportunity out there, some great careers out there, that I do want you to think about, well, what is it that I'm looking for? Because that's half the battle, is that you don't know where you're heading and what you're wanting to aim for if you don't ask some of these questions yourself. What we see with a PMO then, just to wrap up today is that the PMO careers are emerging all the time. 3 years ago, lean agile PMOs would never have even been a thing. Suddenly now we've got people that are experts in it, because they've been doing it for the last couple of years, and there's a lot of organisations now are really interested in, well, how can we support agile delivery in our organisation? Well, we need somebody with that kind of background, and it emerges all the time. And what's great about it is there is no cookie-cutter career path. As we said, it's a climbing wall, not a ladder, and there's a lot of different. You could be working as a project support officer, PMO analyst. Actually, you know what? I'm going to go and be a data analyst for a few years, because I do believe eventually we know that big data and being able to manage and analyze and all that kind of stuff, we know in the next 10 years it's going to be a massive part of organizations' challenges. So maybe that's the way. Just thinking about, well, where is the whole PMO thing's doing? Bottom line is that you really do have to own that yourself, and you do need to be interested, and you need to think, well, okay, it is important and vitally important that I get some really great experience, but equally I've got to be able to understand that what I've got and be able to convey it to other people. If I can't make sense of and show how great what it is that I've been doing, how on earth is anybody else going to be able to recognize that in me and want to talk to me? And ultimately, I totally believe the best people I have come across that love this, they love the whole PMO thing, and it comes through in everything that they're doing. And there's nothing worse than having people setting up PMOs that are just not passionate about it. Half the battle we know in this job, just like in project management, is people. And it's a lot better to be able to work with people with a kind of right attitude and make things work, and get on with people, and ultimately love what we do and where we're doing it. And that's me. It's a bit of a lot going on. There's a lot more, as you can probably imagine. We've skipped through stuff. I've got no idea. There's this, like I said, we talk to so many different types of PMO people, and I'm sure you've probably got questions of your own career that you'd probably like to come to put to me. As we know, we have PMO Flash Mob online. We're always there. You can check it out. We're on Twitter, Facebook, everything. But just search on Google for PMO Flash Mob, you'll find us. And the more formal learning stuff, if you want to see all of that kind of thing that you mentioned, you can get us in the same place. Just type it in. What do we think?
I think that was awesome. Thank you, Lindsay. Thank you so much for that. I mean, it's such a refreshing take on all of this. Everybody just says, firstly, nobody goes into the depths of all of this. And then the advice is typically, just get a lot of project management experience, and then, cross your fingers. So hope is a strategy.
Yeah, I think we're moving away from that, I hope. But we're certainly going in the right direction. We're not there yet, but yeah, I hear you.
Yeah, but I think utopia would be a point where you have PMO leadership, as people are thinking about I want to be a CEO, or I want to be the head of finance, or I want to really run an accounting department. There's a vision and an aspiration for people to say, what, I want to become a PMO leader, and I want to start working for it now at the beginning of my career, and work myself towards there, right? And I think that appreciation right now, I love the fact that you laid out like several aspects, parental career, incidental career, so you see a lot of those two elements quite a bit, but not so much about, from the context of PMO leadership of, I want to take my career into my own hands. So I think for people who are starting to think about all of that and don't know where to start, I think this has been an eye-opener and a real guide to sort of, walk them through this. So thank you so much for that, Lindsay.
No problem.
So Lindsay, like you mentioned, lots of questions, but I'm going to go ahead and sort of keep it down to, 4 to 5 questions that so that, we can try to cover some of these burning things that people might have in their minds. But one thing that I want to ask you right at the top of the bat is, what's the most underrated attribute? Now, that could be a skill or a mindset or an attitude, personality trait, or an approach that a PMO leader uses that makes him or her so successful. What is that underrated attribute from your perspective?
Um, I have quite a lot. I mean, when I think about that kind of question, I automatically think of a few people. You know what I mean? And then you're trying to think about what it is that they're doing. But if I'm just going to pick one, just it's people that are generous with their knowledge and their skills, and want to help others. Find and when I mean by others, it is people who are more junior level to them. That people want to see those people do well and do everything they need and equipped to do their job, and any way that you can help them. But it's also with PMO managers, I think it's this inbuilt thing of you want, your job is to support and help organisations do better at project delivery or program delivery or whatever. And I think it is that generosity of that I want to be able to help you, and we lose that when we get into things like, let's set up processes and templates and all these kind of things. And actually, fundamentally, this PMO lead, if you have this whole servant leadership stuff at the moment is really nice, because it is about, if you've got a really good team around you that really want to support you as a leader, the way that you emulate is by looking at leadership, servant leadership qualities. And I think it is that generosity of, we want everybody to do better. It's not about me. This is about lifting everybody. And I would say that sometimes I think it's underrated because you can't often put your finger on it. They're just like that. They're just being. Underrated, definitely.
Nice. Thank you so much for that, Lindsay. Lindsay, I know that you've worked with many folks to help them get that top PMO role. And based on your observations, what's been their primary motivator or inspiration that's driving them to get to that PMO leadership role? And also based on on the people that you work with, what stage of their career are they usually in? Are they in the beginning stages, middle stages, or now they're at the senior stages and really just want that top role? If you could just share a bit of light on that, that would be great.
I think often the biggest motivator and inspiration when you get down to it is about, certainly in my experience, is that, when I said before that there's two different types of PMO career, that, people that really enjoy setting up PMOs versus those that love nurturing and developing them and maturing them and stuff. So I think the inspiration for one or two comes from that as an individual, saying, well, I've worked for the last 15, 20 years in different PMO roles in two organisations, say. And actually, the inspiration now is I want more challenge around setting more of them up for different types of organisations, because they enjoy getting involved in let's understand what the organisation is trying to do with the PMO and what is the best way forward to get a solution in place that's going to work for everybody, and working through those. Essentially, it's change management, isn't it? But so it's that kind of stuff that inspires a lot of people to. I think what I tend to see is people that are especially in PMO leadership, is that they tend to be in their kind of like mid-40s, and they've been doing it for about 15, 20 years, so pretty much from being out of university or whatever. And it's normally around that time that you think, actually, you know what, I want to go contracting. I want to try this on a freelance basis because I want to get that breadth of experience, because I think I've got a lot more to prove. And also, obviously, the money's better, which, it's obviously a motivator for people at a certain point in their life as well. But I think it's a perfect storm, you see, because at that kind of level of your career, you've had the confidence because you've been in an organisation and you know the knockbacks and the failures and the adversity, but equally, you've learned a lot about how to work with people and influence and all that kind of stuff. So you get the confidence levels, and I think that particular example I'm talking about is that knock-on leadership role from being in a steady state organisation to actually, I want a challenge now of being able to show that I really know what I'm doing, because I'm going to go, I'm going to go and do this in lots of different organisations. So yeah, there's that challenge. I think it's like anything, isn't it? With a career for a long term in an organisation, sometimes you just want to be challenged. And some people see the other side not so green. The grass is not so green. But hey, yeah, that's what I see anyway.
All right, I think that makes a lot of sense, and I think that's trend is sort of similar on the North American side as well. I would feel, in terms of the type of companies, though, is there any special type of companies, whether it's in industry or size or culture, that someone who wants to become a PMO leader or wants that first role in, usually the larger organizations are obviously looking for people who've been there, done that before. But for someone who's looking for that first rodeo, what kind of organization should they be really targeting?
Probably not going to like the answer. Well, to be fair, it depends on what kind of career you want. Because if you want an easy ride, there's going to be certain types of organisations. If you want a challenge, there's all the rest of them. Because what I've found in my experiences over the years is, a lot of organisations find, PMO is obviously evolves over time, or gets shut down, or all of these kind of things. And even some of what you would class as, or what you would believe to be leadership organisations that know what they're doing, that have got everything sorted out, and you'd be really surprised actually they're not that organised and sorted out and mature in terms of project delivery, and therefore it's PMO. Often, again, if you're wanting to get into, again, this comes against it, if you get into leadership roles, you have to think, do you want to be the person that sets it up? Or do you actually want to go into an organisation where the PMO has been around for a long time and actually it's just going through its regular, little bit of evolution every so often? Because again, I think it comes down to experience and confidence levels, but ultimately it's a very personal, what kind of risk taker are you as well, I think comes into it quite a bit. And but I think people make the mistake in thinking, well, if I go for this kind of organisation, I can't name any, obviously, but if you think of some of the bigger names, you say, I'm sure they've got it sorted out, and that the PMO is very much, it'll be a case of just slotting in and taking the reins and getting on with it. No, I think there's a lot of challenges around project delivery and change, and of course we wouldn't have it any other way, would we? Because we wouldn't be working in this field if it was all very straightforward. But often what I find is that actually some of these smaller organisations don't do too badly because they don't have that mass of people and people playing the politics games and all that kind of stuff. Often smaller organisations have got that buy-in from senior execs because their level of authorities and hierarchies are very squashed. So sometimes it's in unexpected places. All I would say is, how do you know? It comes down to, a lot of the time, is how you interview, I believe. And you'll never get a straight answer about, you go for an interview about a PMO role and you want to know about the PMO. You'll never get a straight answer about like how well developed it is and what it's great for and all this kind of thing. You'll get the HR, PR line. But I think you need to think about some choice questions to ask them about, that will give you some insights into where they are in terms of, how that PMO is valued within the organisation, or what are some of the current challenges the PMO has got at the moment. Those kind of things will give you some insights as to perhaps where they are in terms of their journey, or, it's it's very difficult. I've got a lot of friends that obviously go for interviews all the time, and it is one of their biggest bugbears is you think you're going for a particular type of role, job advert looks amazing, and then you go and it's not perhaps quite as it seems. And I think that comes down to how you question, to try and explore yourself really, as to whether this opportunity is going to be right for me at this particular moment in time.
Got it. Makes a lot of sense. And talking about interviews, I know this was you mentioned it in using the interview as an opportunity to really assess where the company is in terms of its PMO maturity or in terms of its possible acceptance, mindsets and attitudes of people towards it. But in terms of the PMO leaders preparing themselves to answer questions about their preparedness to be a PMO leader, what are a couple of recommendations that you would have when somebody's preparing for that PMO leadership interview?
Yeah, I think it does come down to having this, different stories to be told. One of the things that we always do, and I'm preparing people for, obviously, for interviews, and we know what the top things are that they're looking for. We make sure that there's a story to be told around each one of those that shows both success and maybe adversity or failure. Not necessarily the flip of the same coin, maybe two different stories. I think what's also important is to be able to demonstrate that you're not a one-trick pony. And what I mean by that is that you're not just drawing on one source of experience or knowledge or insight, because I think that again shows that you're pretty one-dimensional. So if, for example, they might talk about in an interview about, we want to set up a portfolio dashboard, for example, you should be able to draw on your experiences, but you should also, I think, be able to demonstrate your wider knowledge about that in terms of pros and cons you've read about, things you've learned from peers and colleagues. You know what I mean? So it's not just about firsthand what you've experienced, but also that they can see that actually, if he doesn't know the answer or she doesn't know the answer, you feel confident that this person has the resources and the insight to be able to go and explore that further, research it, do whatever. Yeah. And I think that's the other thing that makes a big difference in terms of, you come to the table with one type of experience and I'm just telling you this is what I've done before. Actually, we want that, but we want and something else, because we know that there's not one answer. We know that there's not one way to do stuff in PMO world. We know that. So I want to be able to get that sense that actually you're not a one-trick pony, that you've only got that approach and it's that way or no way.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, in general, what I'm hearing, Lindsay, is that they should really have that awareness of themselves, their opinions, and those around them, their peers, the market, the industry, whatever have you. And even if they're going against the grain for something, right? Even if they don't believe in certain norms and they have a very strong opinion about something and they wish to, if they're given the opportunity to lead their organization in that direction, they're confident that they know why they're doing it and are able to convince not just the interviewer, but eventually given the opportunity, the leadership and the entire organization to take themselves through there. So that self-conviction is, and the awareness and the confidence are key. That's fantastic. So not just saying, oh my God, I have such amazing experience, but I have a lot of awareness perspectives, and I can have a good debate with people, because at the end, and that makes a massive skill, right? Because essentially you do become a chief facilitator within the organization, and the ability to have an open mind and be able to negotiate people's opinions and then ultimately navigate all those opinions to one direction is one key attribute that PMO leaders should have. Makes a lot of sense. Lindsay, one final question.
Okay.
Any tips for people looking for mentors or coaches because on-the-job learning is always something that PMO leaders should expect. Any suggestions or tips around looking for mentors or coaches?
Well, I think we brought this up on flash mob events before. You need to be very clear about what you're looking for. Is it a mentor or is it a coach? Because if you're wanting that kind of more directional, support, that's probably a mentor that you're looking for. But actually, if it's probably more of a somebody to bounce some ideas off, it's probably a coach. So I think being clear in that respect is helpful, because again, it's going to depend on who you approach to do that. I think often PMO can be a really lonely world. I find is you're often not meeting lots of other PMO people, so it's quite hard if you're looking for it'd be quite nice to find somebody who's a little bit more experienced and a little bit further down the road on a PMO career. But because in organisations it only tends to be a handful of people, it is very difficult to find people. But again, if, let's say, from our experience with flash mobs, people come to these events and they actually meet up offline and they form relationships like that. In some ways, we need more of that, I think. I know certainly with our business on the training side, we do have a coaching and mentoring bit, which is about people that are, I've got this thing to do and I just want to bounce these ideas. Would you do it in this same way, or can you, point me in the right direction? There's a classic things is obviously of trying to find somebody within your organisation that may be a mentor around a certain aspect. So you might find that in your gap, in your skills gap of wanting to pursue leadership, perhaps your mentor might just be another business leader within the business, rather than looking for a mentor that's around the PMO side. But yeah, there's no clear place to go for that PMO specific mentorship or coaching. But again, I think it's just trying to understand, well, do I need a mentor or a coach? And if you do believe that, where do you think you need the help? And that might help to start you to pinpoint and notice people, but you see that you think, actually, I've probably learned a thing or two from those people and making the approach.
Fantastic. Lindsay, thank you so much for an amazing, insightful session. I'm sure the viewers are going to be blown away by what they've heard. And we hope that they're able to take all your actionable insights and put them into action. Thank you once again for being with us.
Thank you very much. Take care.
Take care, Lindsay. And for everyone out there, if you're looking for or interested in certified PMO courses, please check out PMO Learning at pmolearning.co.uk. And like Lindsay already mentioned, for all and a ton of PMO resources, check out PMO Flash Mob at pmoflashmob.org. Thanks once again. Take care.